How to forgive. Hi, my name is Susie Porter, and I help women rewrite their lives so that they can create their happily ever after. Forgiveness. How do you feel when you hear that word? Forgiveness. When I hear the word forgiveness, it carries a lifetime of baggage. In my early life, when I was a Bible college student, I remember learning a lot about forgiveness, and the way that it was taught was that it was a virtue, as if the person who was doing the forgiving was holier or just better than the person who was being forgiven. And then couple decades later, when I started studying A Course in Miracles, where Jesus talks about forgiveness constantly, I found a whole new way of thinking about it. Jesus says in the Course that forgiveness is the key to happiness. And here's the part that really jumped off the page. True forgiveness is when you realize there's nothing to forgive. It kind of reminds me of there was a very famous movie in the 60s called Love Story. And the motto on the posters was, love means never having to say you're sorry. And I never really knew what that meant, but now I get it. When you really truly love someone, like if your 3-year-old says, I'm sorry, mommy, you're like, oh, it's okay. Like when you realize the inherent innocence of everyone, then you realize there's nothing to forgive. But I don't want to jump ahead because I have to be honest and real. And that the way that the Course in Miracles talks about forgiveness and the idea that everyone is innocent and that's guaranteed by God, and that the idea if I judge anyone for anything, I am absolutely judging myself. It's a concept that I still struggle with. Really, as a highly sensitive person, I feel things deeply, and my feelings can get hurt like a lot. Um, Growing up as a little kid with a daddy who I loved so much, but then as I got older, I realized that he wasn't really very good at empathy, or that he couldn't even really do it. That's really rough, right? And it's hard to forgive. So part of my healing was acknowledging how hurt I was, feeling angry, and even the dark, messy emotions of hatred and rage. They were a part of my healing process, a part I still believe was very healthy and necessary. You can't bypass all of the what Carl Jung calls the shadow. He actually teaches that you must incorporate the shadow in order to heal. So for me, I can never get to forgiveness by just um, ignoring the pain, the hate, the anger, the rage, whatever it is. There's no such thing as a bad feeling, right? But the trick here, and what I want to talk about today, is how to not stay there for the rest of your life, right? Like Dr. Joe Dispenza always tells the story about someone who's like mad, and you say, why are you mad? And they go, oh, because my wife cheated on me. Really? Like yesterday? No. Last week? No. Like 40 years ago. So at some point, after you process all your pain and hurt and anger, we've got to all find a way to move on if we want to be happy, right? According to A Course in Miracles, in order to be truly happy and free, we have to let go of all our judgments and grievances. You can have a grievance or you can have a miracle, but I am sorry to tell you, you can't have both. You just can't. It's totally different vibration, totally different energy. You can't get there from here. But our feelings can keep us stuck in our grievance for our whole life, for decades. It just is that way, right? Human beings, when we feel hurt, we put up our defenses and we try to protect ourselves. So I'm going to share some beautiful, profound words from A Course in Miracles. But I want to say that I understand for many of us, this process of learning how to forgive, it's tricky. I get it. It's nuanced. We have to love and care for ourselves in the process. And also, then we have to learn how to let go of our blame, pain, anger, and all of our judgments. All of them. It doesn't mean we let go of our wisdom and our discernment and all that we learned, but we let go of judging what we're not really capable of judging. We can learn to forgive. And I want to make this very clear too, that after you forgive someone, Marianne Williamson always used to say, it doesn't mean that you have to go have lunch with them, right? You don't ever have to see that person ever again. Once you heal your heart and your heart is at peace and your heart feels love and forgiveness, you still have every right, and you should be wise and smart and don't put yourself in harm's way ever. Forgiveness doesn't mean that you lay down and let someone walk on you. No, no. Forgiveness actually makes you stronger. Jesus teaches about forgiveness pretty much on every page in A Course in Miracles. And in lesson 134, he says, let me perceive forgiveness as it is. And he gives an exercise to choose one person and catalog his, and then he uses quotations, sins, because he doesn't believe in sin. So he's being kind of sarcastic. And as one by one they cross your mind, briefly consider all the evil things you thought of him. Byron Katie has a Judge Your Neighbor workshop, and she does this same process where you just write every vile, despicable, hateful, judgmental. Like, this is healthy. Carl Jung does the same thing, did the same thing with his patients when he did shadow work. This is so super important. And I think a lot of self-help, positivity, toxic positivity, religious, especially religion, bypasses the shit and the pain and the anger. When God or the universe doesn't ask us to do that. That is some kind of man-made religious notion that we should be nice. No, we should be real and authentic, and we should love ourselves enough to validate our own feelings, right? So take the time to do step one, right? To what Jesus says here, one by one, think about all the sins and consider all the evil things you thought of him. Okay, that's one part of this process. Now, his prescription here is to every time you think, and I mean, for you and for everyone on earth who's going to go through this process of learning how to forgive, the time it takes to get from the listing getting all your grievances out to the time that you're going to do this step is totally up to you. And I would never presume to say get there immediately. I mean, the faster you get to forgiveness, the sooner you'll be happy. But it's very personal. God knows. It took me quite a long time, and I'm still working on it. Like, it's just a constant process. So Jesus says, once you consider, you think of the person, you think of the things they did, then when you have that thought about that person, ask yourself, would I condemn myself for doing this? Now, I got to be honest, this concept of if I'm blaming him, I'm blaming myself, it's tough. It kind of feels like a bitter pill to swallow, because if I acknowledge that when I blame my father or my ex-boyfriend or anyone for anything, or that girl who was so cruel to me, the minute I do that and the whole time I do that, I am constantly blaming myself. There's no escaping this law of cause and effect. What you give out will come back. But it can be a challenge to let go of that. It might require letting go of a lifetime of programming and beliefs. And that, although while it's a simple process, is not always easy, right? Whoever you're trying to forgive, just notice that voice in your head, right? Notice the thoughts and the feelings that come up when you even try to forgive this person, or when you even think about forgiving this person. For me, if I consider and I see someone, and in my mind, someone who I think hurt me, oh my gosh, my brain is like a great defense attorney with cases and history of why this girl's, just cruel and mean, and my brain just goes on and on and on. It's like a pathology. She did terrible things, whatever. So if I try to see this person as an innocent child of God, there's a part of me that screams, no, she's not. She did terrible shit to me. She should be punished. She hurt me on purpose. That is the part of me that screams. The Course in Miracles says this ego screams first and loudest, right? The voice for love and forgiveness is kind of like a gentle breeze. It's kind of like a butterfly. It whispers. It doesn't scream and yell. Love is gentle and kind. And we have to deliberately choose it, or the voice of the ego will win every time. So even if I have a legitimate case, she did this, he did this, and even if I took it to a court of law and they say, you're right, Susie, you're the innocent victim, they are the evil perpetrator. Even if that's true, I know that deep down inside, that what Jesus says about forgiveness is real because I've felt it all my life. I want to read an excerpt from the Course that is so deep and heavy. So let's all just take a breath. It's all about the unforgiving mind, and it's sobering. The unforgiving mind is full of fear and offers love no room to be itself. No place where it can spread its wings in peace and soar above the turmoil of the world. The unforgiving mind is sad without the hope of respite and release from pain. It suffers and abides in misery, peering about in darkness, seeing not, yet certain of the anger lurking there. The unforgiving mind is torn with doubt, confused about itself and all it sees, afraid and angry, weak and blustering, afraid to go ahead, afraid to stay, afraid to awaken, afraid to go asleep, afraid of every sound, yet more afraid of stillness. Terrified of darkness, yet more terrified at the approach of light. What can the unforgiving mind perceive but its damnation? What can it behold except the proof that all its sins are real? The unforgiving mind sees no mistakes, but only sins. It looks upon the world with sightless eyes and shrieks as it beholds its own projections rising to attack its miserable parody of life. It wants to live, yet wishes it were dead. It wants forgiveness, yet it sees no hope. It wants escape, yet can conceive of none, because it sees the sinful everywhere. The unforgiving mind is in despair, without the prospect of a future which can offer anything but more despair. Yet it regards its judgment of the world as irreversible. I know I'm right. And doesn't see that it has condemned itself to this despair. It thinks it cannot change, for what it sees bears witness that its judgment is correct. It does not ask because it thinks it knows. It does not question, certain it is right. Wow. That sums up about 50 years of my life. And for so many of us who were wounded or hurt and justifiably angry and sad or mad, and we have a lot to judge, but still there comes a time in our adult lives, be it in our 20s or 30s or 40s or beyond, when we must come to terms with this truth that if we have an unforgiving mind, love has no room in that mind. It's a lot to take in. So I'm going to take a breath. And I'm just going to invite you, just for today, it only takes just baby steps, right? Just a tiny little bit of willingness. Just try to imagine or try to see a little spark of light or innocence in someone who you thought was your worst enemy or even a slight enemy. Do this for you, for yourself, for your peace of mind, for your freedom. You know, if it's true that all minds are joined, connected, we're all one, then what we give to our brother, our sister, our mother, our father, or whoever we think hurt us, what we give to them, we are literally giving to ourselves. And if that's true, that what we give is what we receive, then forgiveness is the most selfish thing we can do. Forgiveness is what we give to us, to ourselves. If we keep our grudges and our pain, and if we can't practice forgiving, we just can't be happy. We won't be happy. It's that simple. We can have a grievance or we can have a miracle, but we can't have both. I know how hard it is. I understand that forgiving someone who hurt you or who you believe hurt you can go against everything you think and feel. And to forgive someone can make you feel vulnerable. Yet the irony is, we create what we defend against. And if we can't forgive, we keep ourselves in pain. And we keep ourselves a powerless victim. We give all our power away to the person who hurt us. When we forgive, we take our power back. Forgiveness is the key that unlocks the door. And unearthing our grievances and being willing to see it all differently is the beginning of creating your happily ever after. We're all, as Ram Dass says, just walking each other home. We're all headed for heaven, or whatever you want to call it. Each and every human being will one day return to the cosmic source from whence we came. And none of us will be carrying any luggage. So why not empty those bags right here, right now, today? Why not travel light while you're here on earth in this body? I invite you to consider the gift and the power of true forgiveness and to realize that true forgiveness is when you realize that there's nothing to forgive. Take care.